The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
Personal changes in the executive branch continued last week. New leaders have been appointed to the state energy companies, the fund, and Georgian Railways. Staff changes are also taking place in the Ministry of Infrastructure and the Municipal Development Fund. Prime Minister Kobakhidze has appointed new representatives in the regions. These personal changes are expected to continue in the nearest future. In the first 4 months of this year, Georgian Airways further threatened its position in the Georgian aviation market. According to the Civil Aviation Agency, the airline transported 160,000 passengers between January and April 2025, surpassing Turkish Airlines in passenger numbers and becoming one of the market leaders. In the first quarter 2025, trips abroad by Georgian citizens declined. Between January and March, residents of Georgia made 615,000 trips abroad, which is a 4.4% decrease compared to the same period last year. In 2024, the total revenue of the 10 largest auditing firms in Georgia from auditing services increased by 32%, reaching 67 million Georgian lari. According to reports, EY Georgia ranked first in audit revenue in 2024, earning 19.6 million Georgian lari, and 89 gross year-on-year. PwC Georgia came the second with 15.4 Georgian lari, followed by KPMG Georgia with 8.5 million Georgian lari. BDO Audit ranked fourth, showing 22% growth. The European Commission has prepared the 17th package of sanctions against Russia. The new package will target around 100 ships from Russia's so-called shadow fleet. According to Reuters, this latest package also includes tighter export controls on goods potentially used in the military or high-tech sectors. Food prices are rising on global markets, as indicated by the FAO Food Price Index, which tracks price trends for key products. Last month, the index reached 128 points, marking an increase of 1.2 from March, a 1% rise in global food prices. On Friday, the price of Bitcoin exceeded $103,000, reaching its highest level since late January. The world's largest cryptocurrency rose in value after President Trump announced a trade agreement with the UK, signaling the de-escalation of tariffs. Last week, US Federal Reserve maintained the refinancing rate while the Bank of England eased its monetary policy. In Georgia, the National Bank decided to keep the refinancing rate unchanged at 8%. As of April 2025, Georgia international foreign currency reserves increased by 208 million, reaching 4.5 billion. This figure is 296 million or 6% lower compared to the same period last year. According to the Treasury Department of the Ministry of Finance, 7.1 billion in taxes were collected into the state budget in the first 4 months of 2025. This is 4% more than in the same period last year. Revenue from VAT and income tax increased, while those from profit and excise taxes decreased, thanks to the Georgian business for their efforts. According to Google Analytics, in April 2025, articles on the website bm.g were read 3 million times, which is a 70% increase compared to the same period last year. These articles were read by a total of 530,000 unique users, a 26.7% annual increase. Thanks to our followers and partners for everything. Let's begin the weekly news recap on our Business TV channel.
This is the Checkpoints. I'm Elena Quantilashvili, author and the host of the show, and the Checkpoints team is ready to sum up Business and Economics Week for you. The Asian Development Bank has approved a $104 million loan to help enhance Georgia's energy security. Under ADB's energy storage and green hydrogen development project, the bank will help Georgia create its first ever energy storage facility and explore green hydrogen development possibilities in the country. The project will enhance the country's electricity grid's ability to integrate a higher level of renewable energy by adding a 200 megawatt per hour battery energy storage system BESS to its transmission network at the Ksani substation near Tbilisi. The facility will improve energy security, reduce Georgia's reliance on grid stability support from neighboring countries, and pave the way for greater private sector participation. ADB has been a long-standing partner in supporting Georgia's efforts to strengthen its energy sector, said ADB Country Director for Georgia, Leslie Bierman-Lam. This new project marks another significant step toward enhancing the country's energy independence. With abundant clean energy potential and ambitious development goals, Georgia is well positioned to unlock greater economic benefits from its renewable resources. Increasing electricity consumption, changing precipitation patterns, and water availability pose substantial risks to hydroelectric power, which the Georgian energy sector heavily relies on. Advanced technologies like BESS and green hydrogen are thought critical to addressing climate change risks and providing sustainable energy to the population. ADB also approved a grant-based technical assistance of $400,000 to support Georgia's efforts toward development of green hydrogen. The TA will assist the government in identifying the hydrogen potential and necessary requirements for encouraging private sector participation. We see strong potential for developing green hydrogen in Georgia, said ADB Principal Energy Specialist Adnan Tarin. Surplus energy generated during peak seasons can be converted to green hydrogen and traded on EU energy markets, strengthening Georgia's energy system and creating new economic opportunities. The project will introduce improvements in the legal and regulatory framework necessary for the inclusion of storage technologies like BESS and green hydrogen into the network. This will facilitate private sector investments in renewable energy penetration and the development of larger BESS facilities and green hydrogen. The project supports the Georgian government's goals of reforming the energy sector, emerging as a regional platform for trading clean energy and improving the efficiency of the transmission networks, as reflected in ADB's country partnership strategy for Georgia 2024 to 2028. The Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development will oversee the project execution and implementation of policy reforms envisaged under the project, while the Georgian state electoral system will act as the implementing agency. This is the first kind of such investment for the ADB in the region and a pretty big deal for Georgia, told BMG Leslie Bierman-Lam, the country representative of the ADB at the 58th annual meeting of the bank held in Milan, Italy. The uncertainties facing Asia and the Pacific are also an opportunity to build a more resilient and sustainable future, Asian Development Bank President Masato Kanda said at the opening session of ADB's 58th annual meeting of the Board of Governors. External shocks, debt burdens, and climate change weigh heavily on the people and economies of the region, but we are not starting from zero. Growth remains solid, trade and economic integration are deepening, supply chains are diversifying, and digital connectivity and innovation are accelerating, said Mr. Kanda. Uncertainty is not a reason for retreat, it is a call to be bolder, to move faster, and to work more closely than ever before, Kanda said. More than 5,000 participants joined the annual meeting in Milan, Italy, consisting of representatives of governments, including Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, the private sector, civil society and academia. Italian Minister of Economy and Finance Giancarlo Giorgetti and Governor of the Bank of Italy and Chair of the ADB Board of Governors Fabio Panetta also spoke at the opening session, emphasizing Italy's partnership with ADB. Enhanced collaboration will support higher and sustainable long-term economic growth, avoiding the materialization of downside risks and mitigating their possible consequences, said Mr. Giorgetti. As a leading multilateral development bank and trusted partner in Asia and the Pacific, ADB has been working to solve complex challenges together with its members and partners, both regional and non-regional. This year's annual meeting highlights 4 focus areas that are central to driving transformational change across Asia and the Pacific. First, to address the vulnerability of the region's food systems, ADB will scale up financing for food systems transformation to $40 billion by 2030. Second, ADB is investing in digital technologies to improve access to education, finance, and markets. Third, ADB is investing in modernizing and connecting energy systems, including readiness to commit up to $10 billion to support work on the Asian power grid. Fourth, ADB is deepening investments to build resilience by strengthening infrastructure, restoring and protecting ecosystems, and helping vulnerable communities adapt to the impacts of climate change. ADB also reaffirmed its commitment to scale up private sector development, aiming to increase private sector financing fourfold to $13 billion annually by 2030. Masato Kanda answered BMG's question at the 58th annual meeting in Milan, Italy. The question was about the Middle Corridor perspective. President Kanda says Middle Corridor will be a useful instrument for the diversification of trade routes and better integration of Georgia and South Caucasus into the broader region.
This is one of our highest priorities and we will continue to support. This is not only good for the economy, but for the regional stability and benefit not only the sub-region, but through the global trade, benefiting the whole global economy, particularly in terms of transportation and energy. This is really transformative to change the society, human community better. So, for instance, the case of the ASEAN region, I'm very much keen to support the so-called ASEAN power grids, and we are really committing the 100 billion to support these projects. So there are many ways, including, of course, the Central Asia, Caucasus. We are now trying really hard to implement our RCI policies and the physical projects and together with the partners of the grants, we'd like to implement as much as possible in this regard. Thank you.
BMG also interviewed Eugene Zhukov, Director General of Central and West Asia Regional Department. BMG's question at the 58th annual meeting in Milan, Italy, concerned the factors driving Georgia's economic growth and the assessment of the bankability of the Anaklia Port project. We're not yet involved in the project, Zhukov answered BMG. Georgia's private sector representatives also attended the ADB 58th annual meeting in Milan, Italy. BMG interviewed General Director of the Bank of Georgia, Archil Gachechiladze, CEO of TBC Capital, Otar Sharikadze, and CEO of Galten Taggart, Georgi Kuprashvili. Besides their individual achievements at the annual meeting, their analysis coincides in that all three of them praise ADB for more emphasis on the private sector involvement in development. By the way, Natia Taktakishvili pulled together the main business news and outlook of this week for you. Last week, Lasha Papashvili, the founder and businessman of the dairy farm Quarlisbaga, hosted the media outlets and industry specialists at the farm. Papashvili took on the role of the guide and introduced the guests all the details of the farm. As businessman Papashvili said, the company did not have any financial losses due to the milk scandal. I did not suffer any damage, it's just emotional and moral damage. I invested 150 million in the facility. I'm here for 24 hours a day. My family members tell me that I love cows more than them. The people are still dissatisfied. That's sad, but we are orthodox and I can be read. The businessman said. The founder of the company declares that they have not stopped cooperating with any contractor companies and have not stopped supplying them with milk. We have not stopped cooperating with any company. Milk is checked every day and the laboratory will not forgive you even a little mistake. So we don't have a loss. On contrary, sales increased by 5% in the first week, said Lasha Papashvili. In 2018, Sante discovered antibiotics in milk of Quarlisbaga, which is also confirmed by the materials presented in the case. In the European market, Georgian winemakers complain about the lack of demand for Georgian wine and say that Georgian wine is not available on European store shelves. According to Kocha Chhaidze, founder of Askaneli, there are activities to increase the awareness of Georgian wine, but it's not enough and more promotion is needed. As of the businessman, wine under the Askaneli brand is currently sold in Europe on the German and British markets, but these volumes are not sufficient. According to him, increasing volumes is possible if we place our products on the shelves of European chain markets. We hold the leading positions in Baltic countries, so we have quite good sales. I cannot say the same in other countries. We sell our wine in Germany and United Kingdom. In London, Askaneli wines is sold at several Michelin star restaurants, but it's not enough. We cannot increase the quantities because traditional markets are very dominant and nothing can change this shortly. However, I think that if we have the opportunity to place our wine on the shelves of world-famous supermarkets such as Lidl, Georgian wine will become famous very soon, said the founder of Askaneli Company. Askaneli Company was founded in Guria in 1988. Askaneli makes wines according to old Georgian tradition using large underground clay vessels called quarry. The company produces more than 60 varieties of wine. Zura Shevardnadze, founder of Gardenia, says that he has no plans to expand the garden. He spoke about this with TV program BMG Drive. My garden will not grow anymore. I have enclosed the garden with buildings. I cannot and don't want to do more than that. Having a big garden does not mean high quality, Shevardnadze noted, adding that more than expansion, he is interested in adding new varieties and botanical collections. I prefer to have new collections, new varieties, not to disappoint my visitors. As for me, I would work hard until I get old, he said. According to Zura Shevardnadze, the most attractive season at Gardenia are spring and autumn, from March to May and from September to November. In winter, the garden is closed for 2 months and he travels to India. Perched atop Khudadovi Hill, Gardenia Shevardnadze is an escape from the hustle of Tbilisi. The garden spans 10,000 square meters and the German-style garden is filled with over 3,000 varieties of plants, from traditional Georgian flora to exotic spices. Gardenia Shevardnadze is open daily except Monday. The entrance cost totals to 5 lari. Handmade ice cream company The Cone Culture is expected to open a new location outside the city in June. The company's founder, Keti Mikashavidze, spoke about this with TV program Ministerative. Our brand is growing and consumer demand is increasing accordingly, so we are planning to move to a new location. It will be outside the city, most likely in June, Mikashavidze noted. The Cone Culture's main facility has been operating on the Shevchenko Street for 7 years. In addition, the brand has begun to expand and has already opened a branch in Bazar Orbeliani and City Mall. The company also plans to move the first central branch to a new location. This decision is due to a rapid growth. More specifically, the facility is moving to a larger space. Customers will be able to see the ice cream making process on the site. The new space will operate in a show kitchen format. Our main value is transparency, and that's why we want consumers to see with their own eyes how our ice cream is made, Katie Mikashevitz said. The Cone Culture is a handmade ice cream company that has been operating in the Georgian market for 5 years and offers customers almost 300 flavors. Georgian natural cosmetic brand Piel Naturals is moving to a new stage of development. According to the company's founder, Tatu Kalomadze, the company plans to add a fragrance line, update its strengths, and register the business as a sector. As of here, the brand, which has been independently participating in international exhibitions for 8 years, is now also considering the possibility of receiving state support. The agency Enterprise Georgia is working on registration local cosmetic companies as an unified sector. This will allow us to receive variety types of financing, which will significantly simplify entering international markets and participate in more exhibitions, said Tatu Kalomadze. Tatu Kalomadze also announces the rebranding of its stands in Tbilisi, which will serve to improve the customer experience and move the brand to a new stage. The company actively participates in international exhibitions, which attract the interest of foreign visitors, especially representatives of Arab countries. If we register as a sector, it will be possible to participate in more exhibitions and increase exports, Piel Naturals noted. Moreover, Georgian cosmetic brand Piel Natural will soon be officially presented in Kuwait. According to her, the store opened in Kuwait is the first precedent for Piel Naturals in terms of selling a brand franchise. In the future, the company plans to expand the other international markets. Piel Naturals is a Georgian cosmetic brand which has been creating products with grape seeds and natural materials in line with GMP and ISO standards for 8 years. Guanta Paliani, general manager of the Hotel Postomestia, is talking about the current tourist season and says that she expects an increase in occupancy this year compared to last year. We had almost no one in April. There are no reservations until May 10. We have bookings from May 10 until the end of October. The number of reservations is satisfactory compared to last year. If we don't conceal reservations, we will have more occupancy this year, Paliani noted. According to Guanta Paliani, the hotel has already received several reservations from travel companies, including Korean, Chinese, Israeli and Spanish tourists. As for prices, Paliani says that the hotel has adjusted prices in 2025. This year we increased price slightly. However, at the request of companies that have low budget guests, we lowered the price back to the last year's level, said Guanta Paliani. Currently, a one-night stay in a standard double room at the Postomestia with breakfast costs 350 lari, although prices vary from partner platforms including Booking.com users and travel companies. Restaurant Bangkok plans to expand in 2025. The company's general manager Magda Makaradze told TV program Business Morning. As Makaradze explains, the company's expansion is a response to the growing demand for Asian cuisine. The brand was founded 9 years ago and today is one of the most popular Asian fast food chains in Georgia. Bangkok combines Japanese, Thai and Chinese cuisine and is distinguished by a menu that is tailored to Georgian taste. Currently, the brand has 4 branches in Tbilisi and plans to open another 5th branch during the year. Avlabari branch is scheduled to be launched in early June, where the Isani branch will move. In parallel, it is planned to expand production at Isani facility. It's worth noting that TBC Bank is actively involved in the expansion process, which has been supporting the company since the pandemic to overcome financial challenges and support new projects. Makaridze notes that the next stage is the construction of an enterprise warehouse, which implies centralized logistics and even more efficient operations. The warehouse and enterprise will be located in the central city of Georgia. At this stage, we are looking for a suitable land plot and we are communicating on TBC in this direction as well, Makaridze said. In addition to the capital, the company has plans to enter the regions and in the long term to enter the European market. The company currently employs more than 120 people and plans to create additional jobs as it expands.
Company Roma Gelato, which carries on the tradition of Italian taste, will open a new branch on the Marneuli Highway late in May. According to the company's founder, Tamno Udesiani, this will be the fourth branch in a row. As Udesiani noted, she invested over 500,000 lari to open the branch. She also added that by the standards of Roma Gelato, even for the opening of the smallest facility, the investment reaches at least 300,000 lari. The investment part is especially high due to the fact that we import our equipment completely from European countries and especially from Italy. Accordingly, even a small facility requires solid resources, noted Tamuna Udesiani. Along with the expansion, the company is facing the problem of a shortage of qualified personnel both in service and technological areas. As a result, last year when the company re-equipped and expanded the plant, Roma Gelato had to involve foreign partners, which was associated with additional costs. Despite the difficulties, the company was able to re-equip the plant in 2025, which increased productivity by about a third. Today, the plant can produce about 2,000 liters of ice cream per day. However, as founder notes, the workload largely depends on the weather and seasonality. Roma Gelato offers its customers over 65 varieties of ice cream, as well as assortment of coffee, soft drinks, imported waffles, and various types of sweets. The company has been operating in the Georgian market for 17 years.
And back to Milan, Italy, BMG's one more emphasis was on water resource management and the advice and technical or financial assistance that ADB could provide for Georgia in this regard. Yasmin Siddiqui gave us some insights on how ADB is helping Georgia manage and sustain water resources more effectively. According to her, satellite and smart technologies could be used to give farmers a chance for more optimal solutions in irrigation and other services. Before this interview, still in Tbilisi, Georgia, interviewed Matthias Leitner, head of ADB Environment, Natural Resources and Agriculture Division of Southeast Asia, on the same issue. Can we say that Georgia is rich in this resource, the water?
I would say yes. It's actually very, very rich and has plenty of water available, especially when it comes to glaciers. Glaciers are the main source of that water. In winter, when it snows, ice is being built and it's slowly being released in the summer. Not the problem is, but one of the issues is that it's not evenly distributed amongst the country. The east is not getting enough water and the west has too much water. So it's a distribution problem a little bit. But as a country as a whole, on paper, yeah, Georgia has enough water.
What are the main challenges associated with climate change and also water resources in Georgia?
So I mentioned glaciers before. It's a blessing, but also a little bit of a curse in the coming years. As the weather is warming, as the globe is warming, glaciers are melting faster. So you get into a situation where for the next maybe decade or two, you have too much water because the glaciers are melting, but then eventually there's no glaciers left, so you have too little water. So it's kind of like this dual situation. So that's one of the climate issues that we're seeing. And we're also seeing more extreme events. Just in February, we saw the snowfall in Guria that destroyed infrastructure, sadly, loss of life. Last May, there was flooding in southern Georgia. So these kind of extreme events are becoming more common. Once it was once in a decade, once in 20 years scenario or event. Now it's happening almost every year, this kind of events.
Currently, in your research, you mentioned, based on Geostat information, I think that agriculture is the largest water user in Georgia.
Right.
And you make this focus on climate smart agriculture. How does Georgia do in this regard?
So, in a sense, it means that farmers need to use less water for more output. So we call it more crop for drop. So it's really about utilizing the water resources more efficiently. And there are different ways of doing that. You can change agriculture practices, for example. You can do what's called zero-till. You get a specific seeding machine. You don't disrupt the topsoil layer, and you drill and put seeds into it it contains moisture, it can save more moisture. You build organic matter. So there are different agricultural practices that you can use for farmers to really, conserve water, basically. But knowledge is a big problem. Like farmers need to know how to use these kind of tools to adapt to, less water, to climate change, basically.
It's interesting what you're saying, because agriculture development has been the main priority of the Georgian Dream Rule here in Georgia. Do you have the knowledge? I mean, can you compare what has changed in that direction, like during this 12 years at least? Do you see some progress there?
Progress is there for sure. Georgia has made tremendous progress, and there are certain areas that might be more on like the softer side, but they have huge impacts for farmer. Let's take land titles and land tenure, for example. It's an ongoing process, but farmers need to have a secure land title in order to borrow from a bank or to feel the ownership that's their land that they can invest in. So that progress there has been progress there, and some more has to be made. The same goes for the preferential agri-credit scheme that the Rural Development Agency did, where farmers could access cheaper credits to invest. In the end, farming is a business, and they need money to adapt to a changing climate. They need to grow their business. So for sure, there has been these kind of growth pockets have been there, but a lot remains to be still done in the future.
Do you think this is the bigger problem on the subsidy side that you mentioned, or the infrastructure side that the agriculture is lacking in Georgia, like irrigation, for example?
Right. So it's actually both. What I mentioned with knowledge. I mean, farmers need to know how to adapt to a changing environment, right? That kind of like training, capacity building, and there's some great, NGOs, national organizations like the Georgian Farmers Association. They work directly with the farmer to get them adapted to that changing environment. Also, MEPA, the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture, have their extension workers. Obviously, they need more technical people to really go to the farmers to help them. And it is an infrastructure, and it's a financial issue as well. Like, a lot needs to be invested in a sustainable manner.
You mentioned this, the comparison between East and West Georgia by water demand and supply. I mean, what are some of the scenarios? How might these gaps might change, and what that means for Georgia?
So, I mean, as you know, in East Georgia, it is the breadbasket of the country. You have wine, you have wheat, you have maize, you have a lot of vegetables. It's fertile land, but especially East Georgia, but especially East Georgia is facing more droughts, more heat days during summer, and less water. So we did an analysis looking at what the demand and what the supply is, and there's a huge gap in the next 10, 20 years, and obviously that has direct impact on farmers' income. On the flip side, in West Georgia, again, abundance of fertile land, blueberries, hazelnut, citrus, tea is being grown there, but they have the opposite problem. They have too much water almost. So a lot of flooding is happening that they cannot protect themselves. And once plants are underwater, even for 1 or 2 days, either they die completely or the yield decreases a lot. So these coping mechanisms need to be developed in the future.
And how can these water resources be more balanced throughout Georgia?
Right. So there are a couple of infrastructure investments that one can do, but you also have to work with nature. Like that's one of the major things. You cannot work against nature. What we call green infrastructure. There are ways to, let's say, help water retention to create a natural sponge, wetlands basically, to rehabilitate that. Obviously, it has biodiversity implications. It increases, the natural capital of the land. And such a wetland then absorbs the water if there's too much water and releases it then in the summer. Or one can build small storage water capture ponds. Again, it has benefits for the environment. You create a little bit of a habitat, but then that water can be used during dry seasons. You can use windbreaks, like you can build tree lines, because a lot of the times the topsoil is being blown away, so that fertile layer of soil is being blown away. So these are kind of like the nature solutions, we call them green infrastructure, that you can do working with nature, but you can also obviously need to combine it with gray infrastructure, with hard infrastructure, be it through canals, through dikes, that needs to go hand in hand.
Is average farmers' effort enough for these solutions?
Government support will be very important. When we speak to farmers, I mean, a farmer, especially smallholder farmers, they have done the same practices for generations. Their forefathers have done it, but it just doesn't work anymore in that kind of climate. I mean, they're really, really struggling. They need support. They need support through, again, extension workers that really help them, and there are different models to do that. What's called a farmer field school approach, where farmers are being grouped into producer organizations. They come, they learn how to use greenhouses, for example, how to use different kind of agriculture practices to really give them the tools. And it's like a snowball system. They tell their neighbor, the neighbor sees, oh, their crop is now growing much better than my crop. So you create kind of like a system, a knowledge system amongst the farmers. And that needs to be there. And then obviously coupled with investments on farm. Not everyone can afford that. That's why you need kind of like, maybe preferential credits. You need to look into the financial, system of how farmers can borrow for these kind of investments. It's not easy, but solutions are there.
Mm-hmm. On a more like national level, could ADB support Georgia in that direction?
Yes, so we are doing it already through an irrigation project actually in East Georgia. And we're combining, helping Georgia develop more of the law and institutional regulations around water. And there's also what's called an infrastructure investment component to it, where we do exactly that, where we help Georgia, and we're working with the Georgian Amelioration, GA, MEPA, to invest in upgrading canals, pipes, but also what's important is on-farm solutions. So again, the water rise at farm level, the water needs to be managed on farm level better, right? And the different solutions that farmers then can get, like drip irrigation, where you put tubes in their farms, and the water is being directly applied to the root, basically. So, yeah.
Yeah. Does the country need some kind of like reform solutions, like national priorities, from where to start, how to proceed, this bigger picture for the country? And do you see that in Georgia's case?
Yes. So there is already a new law on water there.
Yes.
It's active, but the implementation is slow. And and Georgia has developed quite good indicators or activities under that law. Like, for example, managing a river not by administrative boundaries, but having what's called a river basin plan.
Yes.
These kind of things are there. Where we see a little bit of work to be done is, for example, on tariffs. If water stays for free, how can, what's the incentive in saving water? So it's part of the water law, but for example, the tariff implementation needs to be further advanced.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Georgia is ready for that?
Yes, and it's kind of like a cat and mouse system, right? I mean, obviously, as a farmer, why would I pay for water if the system is not better? But the system cannot improve if there's not enough money to improve the system. So it's complicated. But we see it on small scale pilot projects where the farmers see, okay, now that they need water is actually coming, and then they start willing to pay a small amount for that water and start. So it's working on a small pilot. Obviously, that has to be now made into a bigger scale. It's definitely possible, and we see it in other countries as well where it works.
If nothing changes, what type of implications this might have on population and businesses?
One of the issues that we might face is a huge outmigration of rural areas, and especially in East Georgia. If farming is not viable anymore, if there's not enough money to be made in farming, especially young people, what should they do, right? So they will probably migrate to cities or even out-migrate. So it's a little bit of a brain drain that we're facing as well, which would be a pity, obviously, because these young people are the ones that really advance, rural economies, can vitalize the rural economies. So we see that as an issue coming up, but also for businesses to invest. If there's no water available, business might hesitate to invest in the next endeavor. These are some of the scenario. Again, it's an extreme scenario, and there's enough time to do something about it. But we have to act quite soon in order for these scenarios not to come true.
You mentioned Farmers Association and number of local NGOs that might be of help and support to Georgia. You also mentioned this law on water resources management, for example, in the implementation of this law and RIA and all that. USAID was actively involved. Do you think such agencies and the expertise not only within country but outside country might be useful for Georgia to look at the best practices or whatever?
It always has to be a combination of both. I mean, there is so much knowledge already in the country, and that has to be utilized, right? Through those national NGOs, organizations who really, you have to speak the language of the farmer. You have to know really what their problems are. So there's no way around of really teaming up with national partners who know the realities on the ground. And when you combine that with international best practices, I mean, let's say the Netherlands, for example, they're amazing in drainage systems, in canal development. If you get that knowledge then in and combine it with that local knowledge, I mean, that can really create a positive spiral effect.
You have conducted a detailed study. I know it's not out yet for Georgia. I mean, what are some of the main recommendations? How can Georgia deal with these challenges that we've been talking about?
So what we did over the last couple of months, we teamed up with MEPA. We had national and international experts look at different climate scenarios to really see where the issues are in the coming years and to identify some of the areas that have potential for investment. What I was mentioning, I mean, what we see obviously quite clear is these extreme weather events, these extreme heat waves in the east, those extreme floods in the west. What we are recommending and what we worked together with the ministry is really finding solutions that fit the context. Basically, let's say there might be some scope for looking into flood protection and drainage protection in West Georgia, and the study really helps identify and works with the government priorities to see where are the pockets and where the investments yield the highest results and returns in the end.
One more question. I mean, Georgia has always been talking about the hydropower development. I mean, could this development help in some ways for like even like normalizing the situation that we've been discussing?
Right, and that's very true. It's not a sector by itself. It's not a silo problem. I mean, water resources are being shared amongst agriculture. You mentioned hydro, energy, transport, industry, clean drinking water for urban areas. It becomes a cross-sectoral problem, and it does become a problem in the future for all these. And there might be competing interests then, right? Especially when it comes to then energy security. But then you have food security. You have different opposing challenges. So to break down the silos amongst different stakeholders, amongst different ministries, we have to work together. Like, we cannot just have an agriculture project. We cannot just have a hydro project. These things are so interrelated in the future that we need to make sure that water is shared fairly and that we make sure that nothing falls through the cracks, basically, especially when it comes to energy security.
Does this approach have to do anything what ADB has been transforming itself into, a more like greener bank than it used to be before?
Right.
I mean, do these priorities change for countries?
I would say it's country driven. I mean, the demand comes from the country. We're not changing for the sake of changing. When we talk to farmers, when we talk to stakeholders, they tell us, look, we see the problems on the ground. We see climate change happening. Climate change is real. Can you help us? And obviously that trickles to a ministerial level, and then the minister has a conversation with ADB. And it's not just Georgia. We see it in other countries as well, that it is front and center, and we cannot close our eyes to that. So it's really I don't call it rebranding, but it's really driven by member countries demanding that kind of investments as well.
So where do you see Georgia going from where it is now in managing the resources? I mean, what could be the three easiest and the most effective steps, if we can identify that?
So I was already mentioned that River Basin Management Council governing body that needs to be established by a river basin to really look at who are the stakeholders who are using the water, and how can that resources be managed. So that's one of the first things that really needs to be looked at. The second thing is, when it comes to irrigation, it's operation and maintenance. Obviously, it's taxpayer money in the end as well that is being used to rehabilitate huge irrigation schemes. If they're not maintained and operated well, in 10 years you have the same problem, right? It's that vicious circle. So to really look at the sustainability, to say, okay, if we invest now, we really need to make sure that we have enough money to constantly repair and maintain that. And it's then also a little bit on the farmer to, that ownership needs to be there on the farmer. They're not just waiting for water to come, they can be proactive. The tertiary canals, they can, through water user associations, they can form groups to maintain smaller canals themselves. So there has to be both a government involvement, but also from the farmer side, a huge push and an understanding that these is worth preserving.
BMG has indeed had a very fruitful week at ADB's 58th annual meeting in Milan, Italy. I want to once again thank the bank for that. ADB is not only the partner of the country, but a very solid partner and source of news and analysis for business media Georgia itself. Besides BMG, IPN was also invited. During very energetic days, the only unavailable source for the Georgian media was our Georgian Dreams leadership, represented by the Finance Minister Lasha Khutsishvili and his deputy Ekaterina Guntsadze. Despite the fact that both Khutsishvili and Guntsadze were visible for the BMG on different open sessions, we maintained the ethics of communication and had a very intensive dialogue with the press center of the ministry to arrange a short interview with either Khutsishvili or Guntsadze on the main topic, what Georgia's bringing home after the 58th annual meeting. I will let you decide whether it is normal or not to have updated information on all the meetings of ADB senior representatives, Georgian NGOs, private sector representatives, to have all their one-on-one interviews and getting to know the details of what the country achieved only from the short press releases of the ministry. But this is not all. In the end, the picture changed only for the BMG. The press center of the Ministry of Finance organized a one-on-one interview for the IPN and left out BMG. In the first place, BMG views this a very disrespectful step, but on the other hand, this is a clear sign of an open discrimination of one media source over the other. This is not acceptable. It violates all the rules of the freedom of speech and unbiased accessibility to the official information and undermines the credibility of the ministry as the provider of that information. Lastly, BMG believes it is a total shame to treat media preferentially at the meeting where the ministry itself is not an organizer but a participant. In our opinion, it should be more respectful of the ADB, the host institution which recognizes the credibility, standard and quality of the information provided by BMG. We will meet next Sunday, but before that, you know what to do. Check us out and follow us on bm.g.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.